The countdown to the popular National Arts Festival there has officially kicked off. The annual festival sees a range of artists from across the world, really, converge in the Eastern Cape Town for about 2 weeks to showcase their work. Let's get you insights on what to expect this time around with the festival CEO, Monica Newton, who joins us now via our video link this morning. And it's lovely to see you, Monica. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. It's just one of those annual events that many art lovers and others typically look forward to, but it certainly hasn't been without its challenges. I mean, after that dreadful break caused by COVID-19, we now have to deal with load shedding.
Absolutely. But the festival in its 49th year is up to any challenge. Our incredible event has survived states of emergency, water shortages and load shedding. So we are 100% prepared for load shedding this year. We've got backup power, backup generators. In fact, the footprint of the festival has been defined this year by our load shedding backup plans. So we are ready for anything at this point that South Africa has to throw at us.
Yeah, it's a great South African story of resilience, isn't it? How has everything affected, though, just the interest in the festival itself? Because I imagine, you know, it's great to hear that you are able to, for instance, withstand the worst effects of load shedding, but that must come at a cost.
Absolutely. So, of course, every festival faces its own unique context. So absolutely, it's impacted on budgets. It's impacted, as I've mentioned, on the footprints, on our venue selections. But fundamentally, we are a festival of time and place. And as you mentioned, a South African story of resilience. So we design the festival to meet its context. Otherwise, we can't remain relevant. We can't remain responsive. So we are always influenced by what's happening in the arts, what's happening in the country generally. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's more difficult. But yeah, it's definitely had an impact on our budgets. But we've had warm responses. We've got some sold out shows. We're really looking forward to, as always, a wonderful multidisciplinary showcase.
Yeah. Speaking about how you respond to the arts, perhaps you can give us a snapshot of where you reckon the arts currently is. I mean, it's certainly also been a sector without its without its difficulties, for lack of a better term. So how has that impacted how artists themselves are able to put work together, let alone showcase it on that kind of platform?
There's no doubt that COVID-19 had an incredibly cataclysmic impact on the arts. Obviously, within moments, opportunities both locally and abroad just disappeared. And that impact we felt it. Some of the companies that used to supply us with equipment and technology are no longer in existence. Many of them had to sell off the equipment to survive, to continue to pay their staff. We've definitely seen, of course, loss of life. We've lost some incredible artists along the way. But I think fundamentally what we're seeing is an incredibly resilient arts sector, but there's no doubt that ourselves as the National Arts Festival and the artistic community are still recovering. And audiences are still recovering, our economy is still recovering, and of course still facing additional challenges as well. So we find ourselves, as in many cases in South Africa's history, at a point of transition, at having to make decisions about what's important, what's meaningful, and the nice-to-haves versus the must-haves. So that is a place that we all find ourselves in, but fundamentally we invest in the arts and we invest in festivals because they're such an important engine of growth and development and innovation and new voices and career development and talent identification. So we do what we do because we love it and because it's important. Well, and sometimes it's more difficult than at other times, and this is one of those times.
Absolutely. It goes without saying that it's incredibly important work, especially because many of us look to artists to kind of put up that mirror to society, right? I wonder to what extent the context under which we're working this time around has informed the content itself. You know, are you finding that there are artists who are coming forward with, you know, a lot of the thematic interpretations of what we've experienced over the past couple of years? There's been a lot of conversations around mental health, loneliness, unimaginable grief and loss that so many of us have suffered.
Yeah. There's no doubt that our program this year definitely does reflect the times. the arts is the canary in the coal mine. That's where we see where trends are. We see where cutting-edge conversations are. So we see artists like Gregory Maqoma beginning to face the end of his career, coming back, touching base with his roots, with his work around Chief Maqoma and, of course, his own incredible heritage. We have an extraordinary artist like Msake, who's taking very bold steps to make particular decisions about her career, coming to the National Arts Festival with both a musical but also a multidisciplinary showcase. So testing her own sensibilities and changing how she's perceived in the world. We have some fantastic work that speaks to family. Africa Sings, a wonderful musical, celebrates who we are and our history and where we've come. So there continues to be narratives of reflection, focus on identity and healing, certainly. The extraordinary piece, The Whistleblowers, who was with us last year from AFTA, a new young production company of the young cast that created Whistleblowers, is back with us this year. And it's an incredibly important story about truth tellers and the consequences, and of course in South Africa at the moment a very relevant and contextual conversation.
Yeah.
But there's also work that celebrates life and provides entertainment and is everything that South Africa is at the moment. Beautiful, ugly, complex, difficult, but ultimately something to celebrate.
Absolutely. Life is about light and shade, isn't it? And even though things change, in many instances, the human condition doesn't. You know, I've really come to enjoy what theatre more specifically has had to say about, I don't know, those long-standing questions that gnaw at us, that existential angst that we sometimes have to deal with. And I imagine there's something to look forward insofar as that is concerned too, in one way or the other at least.
Absolutely. You know, one of the most extraordinary things about the arts is the ability to cause us to reflect. And sometimes they'll tell us a story that we don't particularly want to hear, or they'll tell us a story that's complicated and difficult, but in a way that's accessible, and in a way that makes it possible to think, perhaps to choose a different path if we were perhaps heading down the wrong path. But of course then we also have the power of comedy and satire to show ourselves aside comedically the things that define us, the mistakes that we make, the comic reality sometimes of the world that we live in. So, yeah, we're able through the arts to reflect on so many different elements and to inspire, to frustrate, to anger, and hopefully to move people. Yeah. And that's really what we all aim to do.
Absolutely. You know, it'd be remiss of me not to speak about Eusebius Mkhaiza, especially on this, the day of his funeral. He had been openly supportive of the National Arts Festival, openly backed through his weight behind the important work of artists. And I suppose even as, you know, some of his friends and some of our colleagues bid him farewell there in Makhanda, there's going to be something said about ways through which a festival like that can continue paying tribute to someone like him.
Absolutely. And in fact, the funeral is here at the monument. It's happening right now. Yeah. So fundamentally, we take from Eusebius's incredible career and his intellectual capacity the ability to analyze, to think, to criticize, to see the world for both what it is and what it could be. And of course, he and many others are an inspiration. And of course, as somebody who grew up in Makhanda, he was a big fan of the festival. We were a big fan of his. Of course, he was critical and complex and in some cases not supportive of some of the things that we did, and in some respects rightfully so, because a relationship that is purely one-dimensional doesn't actually create change, mutual or otherwise. So we will miss him. His intellectual legacy will live on, and we at the festival will continue to celebrate free thinking, critical thinking, thought expression, because that ultimately is the greatest tribute we can pay to Eusebius, is that we continue to create platforms for expression.
Absolutely. Beautiful and well thought out tribute there, even though in some way that did put you on the spot. I appreciate it, and it's been lovely speaking to you. Monica Newton is the CEO of the National Arts Festival. Once again, thanks very much indeed.